If you have knee pain, then I really want you to watch this video because we're gonna go over exactly how you can activate your quads, how you can create more space and flexibility in your knee when it doesn't bend all the way, and so much more. In fact, what we're about to watch is an excerpt from our Lower Body Fix Masterclass, where we go over so many movements to help your knees feel significantly better. So check it out. I'm gonna talk about the knee. This is a point that I am really compassionate towards. And like I said, I've had 2 knee injuries. One when I was younger, getting hit by a car. One when I was doing gymnastics and blew my knee out when I got older. And now I've had, how many knee surgeries? It's 5 knee surgeries, right? I always forget now. It's 5 knee surgeries I've had, 4 on the right side. And so the first 3 did not work out. And the final one actually did work out, at least in replacing my ACL and giving me some more cushioning with a meniscus transplant as well. And man, it was a rough 10 years. And so when you have knee pain, it's really frustrating. But I'm here to tell you something interesting. When I moved my body wrong, I had a lot more knee pain. And when I learned the principles I'm about to share with you, I'm gonna share with you guys 3 principles, right? Yeah, 3 principles that you need to know in order to make sure that your knees feel good, okay? And I've done this to a lot of people before who have knee pain, who when they stand up from a chair, they're like, oh, I got knee pain. And then immediately after I teach them this, boom, knee pain goes away. So let me dive into this knee pain here in a second. Okay, the 3 principles that you need to learn when we're talking about knee pain. Number 1, when we stand up from a chair, if we have knee pain, and we put our weight onto our toes, and we bring our knees forward over our toes like this, what we're doing is we're forcing the quad muscle to fire more, which can pull the knee joint together. And oftentimes when people have knee pain, they don't have enough strength inside that knee joint in order to be able to do this, right? So the difference of this is when I use my hips to stand up, then my knee glides nice and smooth like this, okay? Nice and smooth, it glides in the joint. When I bring my knees over my toes and I don't have the strength or have injuries in there, my knee goes, and it grinds together, it's more tight, right? And that can cause a lot more pain, and it can even wear down our meniscus at the same time. And so, number 1, when we stand up, we don't push our knees over our toes and try to extend through the knees. We're not doing this to stand up. We're not extending through the knees like this, right? Instead, keep the weight in the heel, imagine that your shins are more vertical, and then extend through the hips, okay? So the easiest way for you to think about this is imagine that I buried your shins in sand, okay? So you can't move your shins forward or backward. And you gotta figure out how to stand up without doing this, right? Without sliding the knees forward. Immediately, you'll notice that you have a natural tendency to use your glutes and your hips rather than use the muscles that surround your knee. So that's gonna make the knee feel better. Okay, number 2, we already touched on it a little bit, but weight distribution on the feet. So if I bring my knees forward, I'm naturally gonna be up on my toes. If my weight is forward on my toes, even if my knees aren't over my toes and I stand up and my weight's forward on my toes, I'm still going to use more of my quad muscles than I'd like, and I'm gonna pull the kneecap down, I'm gonna pull the joint together, and it's gonna hurt worse. So what I like to use is this simple rule. Put 70% of the weight on your heels and 30% on the ball of your feet and split it between the outside where the pinky is and by the big toe right here. So how do we do this? When we're standing up from a chair, this is my favorite move, by the way, to work on things with knee pain, because standing up from a chair is such a critical movement, right? We all should be able to do this for as long as possible. So what you're gonna do is this. Put your feet on the ground. You're gonna start to notice a pattern here. Spread the toes, grip the ground with those toes, so we're activating the arches. So now we know we have active feet. Now we're gonna push our heels into the ground, knees are buried in sand, and we're gonna feel the weight mostly in our toes, and then 30% spread between both sides of the feet, and we're gonna stand up like that. Now immediately when we do this right, you're probably gonna feel a lot more of the muscles here in your glutes, your hamstrings, doing this, extending the hips this way instead of standing up by extending the knee that way. That's a game changer when it comes down to feeling better in your knees and in your body, okay? Now the last and most important key to healthy knees is this. Your knee needs to go the same direction as your toes, all right? So see if you can find a mirror and a chair, and go ahead and put that chair in front of the mirror. And I want you just to do this. Don't think about it too much and just stand up from the chair. And I'll bet you anybody, almost anybody with knee pain is gonna be making one of these 3 mistakes, and almost everybody with knee pain is gonna be making this last one. What you'll notice is this. You'll stand up, and as you do, your knees will wobble in like this, right? And every time we wobble those knees in, we're taking a hinge joint, right? Coming back to the knee model here. A hinge joint, what's it supposed to do? It's supposed to hinge forward and backward, like this, okay? And what happens when we do this? we're putting twisting motion, we're making it go side to side, we're grinding down the sides of our meniscus right here. The knee is a hinge joint. Treat it like a hinge joint. This is such an important thing because when our knees cave in, it causes more pain and damage to our knees. Okay, this is the most important tip. So when we're standing up from a chair, look down at your thigh bone. Make sure it's going right out from the middle of your foot. And as you stand up and you activate your arches, you stand up, your weight's in your heels, look down and look for those wobbles in like this. And when you hit those wobbles, pause, take a moment. You can even use your hands for support if you need to, right? On your thighs, on your knees, wherever, and slowly come up. And then on the way down, really slowly. And what you'll notice is, this is what it's gonna look like at first. Your knees are gonna wanna wobble in, it's gonna shake from side to side. That's totally fine. We're waking up a lot of muscles that surround the thigh, that surround the knee, that surround the hip, that are gonna support your lower body. As you gain strength and coordination, that's gonna make your lower body feel significantly better, okay? So those are the 3 keys to healthy knees. When we're doing any sort of lower body motion and we have aches and pains in our knees, we don't bring our knees over our toes and stand up that way. We're not doing a quad extension like this. Again, what I wanna emphasize here is that's not a bad motion. That's a fantastic motion for building athletic strength once you've recovered from your knee pain. Once you're able to do basic motions like squatting in a wider stance with your weight in your heels, with your knees not going over your toes. Not a movement you should be doing first, okay? So don't put your knees over your toes, weights on the heels, don't forget about those arches and those toes like we talked about in the beginning, and then extend through the hips while making sure the knees are going the same direction as the toes, right? So we're extending through the hips to stand tall like this. Okay, now that we've gone through just the basics of healthy knees, we're gonna go over, ooh, this is a good one. How to create flexibility in the knees when we can't squat. So a lot of people, over time, we don't squat very deep. So we rarely do this in our society, right? We rarely sit down and just relax in the bottom of a squat, or we can just hang out here, or our knees fully bent like this. And especially if we end up having knee injuries, a lot of times we lose this range of motion. So one of my favorite ways to gain this range of motion back is a movement called gapping the knee. It's a way for you to get support in between the knee right here that opens up the space in the knee and allows you to go with more range of motion while actually creating that support that causes a lot less aches and pains when you're doing this motion, okay? So here's how we're gonna do it. You can, again, starting on a kneeling position, similar to the ankle stretch, you take a towel and you roll it up and you put it behind your knee like this, and you bring that knee into the point where that towel's nice and sturdy in there, okay? Now for a lot of people, when you have that loss of flexibility, you might come forward and go, oh, and it feels like compression inside the knee joint, okay? This is the movement for people like that. You put that towel behind the knees, it creates a little compression in there, and what you'll notice is, since there's support and it's pushing the tibia forward, this lower leg forward, you'll get more range of motion as you come forward. And so just like the ankle drill, you can play around with the angles, the position, you can come forward and backwards like this, forward and backwards like this, creating that space, gap in the knee, 60 to 90 seconds, right? And then what you can do is test again, right? So you can start out by doing this. Start out by just sitting on the edge of the chair and how deep can I squat before my knee goes, oh, okay, that's as far as it goes. Then we gap the knee for 60 to 90 seconds. And again, you can do this sitting by just bending your leg like this and coming forward like that, right? So we're trying to create the space in the knee. And then once we've done that, test again and see how much more range of motion you have. It's not uncommon for people to gain several inches in depth on their ability to bend their knee or squat by gapping the knee. Okay, now I do want to give you guys one more tip for this just because a lot of people can't even do any of these things like squatting and things like that, and that's totally fine. So in that circumstance, what we can do is we can bring our knee up towards our chest like this, put the rolled towel behind it, grab onto our shin like this, and we can pull down like this, and we can walk our hand towards our shin and pull like this, okay? Now another thing is if this is still too hard, you can put a washcloth in your hands over there and pull using the washcloth so you don't have to have as much flexibility in your hamstring to do it that way. The goal is we're trying to create that range of motion while putting that support behind that knee to create space in the knee, and oftentimes this can be a great way for people to recover their range of motion and their ability to flex their knee all the way. Okay, what are we doing next? Ooh, now we're talking about the muscle that nobody strengthens that protects the knees. Okay, I like this one. This is really good. Okay, so we've talked about how to stand up from a chair and make sure that you have the 3 keys for healthy knees. And we've talked about how to create that flexibility and that low range of motion that a lot of people end up losing. All right, those are 2 fantastic movements for you. One thing about the knee joint is this. People think that the muscles here, the quads and the tibs that run up and down the front sides of your shins right here, they think that these muscles are supposed to do this, extend and bring the toes towards the nose. And that's what they do, but ultimately these muscles are designed to decelerate motion, okay? So when you have strong quads and strong tibs, what that means is this: if I'm moving forward and I'm walking and I stop, those muscles can stop me. They can stop me without pain. They decelerate motion. If I'm running and I slow down, they decelerate motion. If I'm walking downstairs, this is a big one for most people with knee pain. If I take a step down the stairs and I start to go forward and I go, ah, and I have pain, that's because I don't have the strength to decelerate motion, okay? So right now I'm gonna show you one of the simplest moves that you can do to strengthen these muscles, the tibialis anterior on the front of your shins. Then I'm gonna show you how to activate your quads my favorite way. That way we can work the quads in a safe range of motion that's gonna help the squat become stronger at the same time and still work on the glute at the same time, okay? So first the tibs, okay? If you guys have trouble going downstairs or decelerating motion, this is a fantastic one. You can start by sitting at the edge of a chair, you point your toes down like this, okay? And all you're gonna do is this: lift your toes to your nose as much as possible, squeeze your quads, and lift those toes as much as possible until you feel all these muscles right here firing, okay? And you're just gonna point your toes, pull, point your toes, pull, point your toes, pull, point your toes, pull. And you'll find that after about 60 to 90 seconds of this, you're gonna get a pretty big pump in the front sides of your shins. Now, if this is too easy for you, you can do the same movement where you're leaning against a wall. So you'd stand up and you would just lean against a wall with your back, with your feet about 12 inches from the wall, your legs straight. Same thing, point your toes, lift your toes to your nose, and just do it that way, all right? And just like the other progression, the calf rocks, you can also do this on one leg against a wall to make it significantly harder. Now this movement is fantastic. If you have knee pain, I highly recommend you try doing tib curls for a few weeks every single day. It's gonna strengthen these muscles, which are gonna strengthen these muscles, and strengthen your ability to decelerate motion, which is often where people have knee pain. Again, going downstairs, stopping while walking, things like that, okay? Now the next move, this one's gonna be one you're gonna wanna pay close attention to if you have knee pain, because it's my favorite way to activate the quads, okay? And it really helps because you're activating the quads in a way that makes your body function similar to the top of a squat. And so we're gonna activate the quads while also allowing the glutes to facilitate hip extension. And so it's gonna help us get better at this motion, right? And again, this motion, one of the most fantastic and foundational movements you want to be able to do, okay? All right. So this one, again, I'm gonna come to a kneeling position. I wanna make sure that whenever you're in a kneeling position, especially if you have knee pain, that you have a nice soft surface below you, okay? Really important. Now in this position, what you're gonna do is this. Imagine if I'm lunging straight forward like this, well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna step my leg out to the side. It's gonna be out 30 degrees, 90 degrees, something like that, right? So we want this for support. Now from there, and this is the most important part, look at my back foot. My toes are pointed straight down. My ankle's not to the side like this, okay? My toes are pointed straight down, and I'm gonna kick this foot into the ground. Okay? And I'm gonna keep that foot kicked in the ground the whole time. So immediately, if I kick that foot in the ground, what I'll feel, my quad starts to fire. And my quad starts to fire, my leg starts to shake, I'm pushing that toe into the ground the entire time. Now from there, I'll use my hands in front of me for support. If I need to, I can have a chair next to me, a couch, something for support. And all I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna drop my hips backwards, trying to bring my butt towards my back heel until I feel like I'm as much range of motion as I can handle. And then I'm going to push that toe into the ground, and I'm gonna try to squeeze this glute. I'll get to the glute activation in a sec too here. And I'm gonna extend the hips like this, okay? Now for some people, this is gonna look like this. Just this much range of motion down, this much range of motion up, and their leg's gonna be shaking the entire time, and it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be absolutely brutal. That's totally fine. Over time, the goal is to increase the range of motion until we're able to get our butt almost all the way down to our heels, but in a way that's pain-free. So only go through a range of motion that's 100% pain-free. Okay? So if it's small, that's totally fine. And I got a cool tip for you. You'll see how we can put some of this stuff together. I can take that towel again, I can put it behind my knee like this, and I can do the same thing, the quad drill, and I can gap the knee for support to increase that range of motion while working on this quad activation drill at the same time. And the big thing again, remember to squeeze the glutes and extend the hip at the top, and remember to keep that toe pushed in the ground the entire time. Now what's great about this is your quad will start shaking. Woo! It'll get kind of crazy when you're doing this movement. When it's shaking like that, that means you're doing it properly. When it shakes like that, that means you're activating those muscles. And a huge part of what we do with WeShape and the workouts that we provide our members is teaching you how to start with a strong foundation. And that is muscle activation and range of motion. So flexibility and getting access to the right muscles. And then we start changing the movements, making them more difficult, adding more range of motion, more strength, more power, more flexibility over time. But these movements right here are foundational to making sure that you're activating the right muscles and building that mind-muscle connection. Because if you do squats and your quads shut off because you had a knee surgery all these years ago or some injury that caused that quad to shut off, well, guess what? You're going to have knee pain. You have to reactivate that muscle. You have to build the mind-muscle connection with your quad. You have to build that neural pathway to your quad muscle. And then once it's back, then all of a sudden you start to squat again and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know I was squatting without a quad for the last 10 years, right? And it'll absolutely change your life. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Lower Body Fix Masterclass. Now, if you're wondering yourself, what else did you teach in the masterclass? Well, guess what? You can sign up right down below by clicking that link, and we're gonna send you for free the entire Lower Body Fix Masterclass, covering the foot, ankle, knee, hip, lower back, and tons of questions from our subscribers. So go ahead and click the link below, sign up, and we'll send you that link right now.